I want you to close your eyes for a moment and picture God. What image appears? An elderly figure with flowing beard, or perhaps a compassionate presence? Now ask yourself, is that mental picture enhancing or limiting your spiritual connection? For the next 10 minutes, I'll challenge you to expand that internal map of the divine, illuminating it with colors and dimensions you might never have considered. This expansion could completely transform your faith journey. If you've been feeling stuck or disconnected in your spiritual life, what you're about to discover might reshape how you experience the divine in surprisingly powerful ways. Have you ever felt like something was missing in your relationship with God? Like you're reaching out, but connecting with someone who doesn't quite understand you? I hear this from people all the time, and it's actually more common than you might think. Here's the reality we need to talk about. Most of us have been taught to see God only as a father figure, a powerful, authoritative male presence watching over us from above. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that image. Jesus himself used it constantly. But when that's the only way we picture God, it creates some real problems. Think about this for a second. What happens when you had a difficult relationship with your own father? Or maybe no father at all? What if your dad was harsh, absent, or abusive? Suddenly that father image of God becomes really complicated. Every time someone says God the Father loves you, your brain might be thinking, well, my father didn't love me very well, so what does that mean about God? This single image of God creates a barrier for many people, especially women, those with father wounds, or anyone who connects more deeply with nurturing than authority. I was talking with my friend Sarah last month. Smart woman, successful career, been going to church her whole life. She told me, I believe in God, but I feel this weird disconnect I can't explain, like I'm praying to a stranger. Another woman I know spent 20 years sitting in church every Sunday feeling empty inside. She went through all the motions, said all the right things, but couldn't truly connect with a purely masculine God. 20 years of spiritual emptiness because the only image of God she was given didn't match her experience of the world. It's like being given just one puzzle piece of a 1,000-piece puzzle and told it represents the whole picture. You can study that piece intensely, but you'll never see the complete image that way. Our early experiences with parental figures literally shape how we relate to a higher power. If that image is damaged or doesn't connect with who we are, our faith suffers. When you can't relate to a father figure God, your spiritual life becomes routine and ultimately unfulfilling. Not because there's anything wrong with you, but because you're trying to connect with a version of God that feels foreign to your experience. How can you fully trust someone you can't relate to? How can you pour out your heart to someone who doesn't seem to understand your experience? I'm not saying we should throw out the father image. Jesus called God Abba, showing us a closeness that was revolutionary. But limiting God to just one role or gender limits our own ability to connect. By expanding our understanding of who God is, we open ourselves to deeper spiritual connection that many are desperately seeking. What would happen if we explored the fullness of God's nature beyond just one dimension? Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever noticed how differently men and women tend to approach spirituality? Women often focus on relationships, nurturing connections, and emotional experiences. Men frequently gravitate towards structure, systems, and authority. There's a reason for that, and it affects our spiritual lives more than most of us realize. Throughout history, women have struggled to see themselves fully reflected in the divine when God is presented exclusively as male. Think about it. If you're a woman and every image, every pronoun, every metaphor for God is masculine, where do you find yourself in that picture? I remember Sarah, a longtime church member, sitting in the back pew with tears streaming down her face after another sermon filled with exclusively male language for God. I feel invisible, she whispered, like I'm somehow less in God's eyes because I don't share his gender. This spiritual gap affects half of humanity who must constantly translate their experiences to connect with a God who seems fundamentally different from them. Having to mentally convert everything about yourself just to feel seen by your creator is exhausting and limits how deeply women can connect with their faith. The Bible actually uses feminine imagery for God in several places, but most of us never hear about these passages in church. God is described as a mother eagle protecting her young in Deuteronomy. Jesus compares himself to a mother hen gathering her chicks under her wings. In Luke, Jesus tells a parable where God is like a woman searching diligently for a lost coin. These images reveal essential aspects of God's character that get overlooked. A spiritual director who's worked with hundreds of women told me something profound. When women can't see any of themselves in God, they often can't fully believe God sees all of them. If God is exclusively male, what does that say to women about their spiritual value? About how completely they're understood by their creator? Men who naturally connect more with nurturing, compassionate qualities rather than authority and power can feel the same disconnect. Many feel alienated by the warrior god imagery because it doesn't match their gentle, creative natures. Women can connect with God by recognizing the feminine aspects of God's nature that have always been there. The Hebrew word for God's spirit, ruach, is grammatically feminine. The wisdom of God in Proverbs is portrayed as a woman. The compassion of God is described using rakamim, which comes from the word for womb. It's like seeing God only in black and white versus full color. When we embrace both masculine and feminine divine qualities, we experience God as a complete being who truly understands all of us. Maria, a woman in my community group, discovered the feminine images of God in Scripture and said, "For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I have to be someone else to approach God. I can come as I am, fully woman and fully loved." Here's something that might surprise you. The way you picture God in your mind actually shapes how you experience your faith every single day. This isn't just a theory or some abstract idea. Our brains are wired to connect with what we can relate to. When you've only got a single, narrow image of God, you're creating a box that limits that connection. It's like viewing a vast landscape through a keyhole. You glimpse part of the beauty but miss the breathtaking panorama. Our brains form neural pathways based on the images we focus on. When your only picture of God is as a father figure in heaven, your brain develops a specific pathway for connecting with the divine. The more limited your view of God, the more limited your spiritual experience becomes. Many people are stuck in this box without realizing it. They wonder why their faith feels stale or why they struggle to sense God's presence. They might blame themselves, thinking something's wrong with their faith, when they're simply working with a limited picture of who God is. Consider how you might perceive a simple object like water differently, depending on your experience as essential for life. A powerful force that carves canyons, or a gentle rain that nurtures gardens. Each perspective reveals something true about water's nature while transforming how you relate to it. Similarly, God appears throughout Scripture as creator, healer, friend, comforter, guide, wisdom, truth, and love itself. Each aspect reveals something different about God's character and relationship with us. These are pathways to deeper connection. I spoke with a man named James who had always seen God as a distant authority figure. He prayed out of obligation, not connection. These limited neural pathways had shaped his entire spiritual experience. Then someone suggested he try picturing Jesus as a friend walking beside him during prayer time. I felt my entire faith transform, he told me. For the first time, I wasn't talking to the ceiling. I was sharing my life with someone who cared about my daily struggles. When we see God through multiple lenses, we begin to recognize divine presence in more areas of our lives. God becomes visible in your work, relationships, creativity, rest, even in your questions and doubts. This expansion isn't about rejecting the Father image, it's about adding to it, making it fuller. The Trinity itself shows us God exists in relationship, fulfilling different roles that reveal various aspects of divine character, all working in harmony to connect with us in our everyday experiences. When we break free from that limited box, we discover a God who is more accessible, relatable, and present. Your relationship with the divine becomes more dynamic, personal, and real. So ask yourself, what image of God dominates your thinking? How might that be limiting your experience? What would happen if you expanded that picture? The truth is, God is bigger than any single image we could ever create. When we expand our understanding, we expand our capacity to experience God's love in our lives. God embodies a full spectrum of attributes, both masculine and feminine qualities, that help us connect in different ways. Starting today, try exploring different aspects of God's nature. Notice which images speak to you, connect with God as a guide, healer, or wisdom, and use these as bridges to authentic spiritual connection. By removing human-imposed limitations on our understanding, we open the door to the deep spiritual connection our hearts truly seek. What image of God resonates with you today? Stay blessed by the best, friends.